Neighbors complained about noise coming from the apartment where a disabled person lived, but when the police arrived and broke the door open, they found something amazing. David opened his eyes and immediately squinted. It was too bright around him, too white, too clean and uncomfortable, a hospital room, which meant he was still alive. Taking a deep breath, he tried to move his hands. They responded with excruciating pain, but still obeyed. As David examined his fingers, he noticed they were swollen, but they moved, and that was a relief. However, when he tried to move his legs, he couldn't. Trying again and again, he felt nothing, no sensation in his hips, knees, or toes. David closed his eyes, hoping it was all just a dream, but he wasn't sleeping. Everything around him was real. His legs were encased in plaster and suspended on special structures. He had no control over them. With fear, his heart began to race. Something shrilled above his head, and a nurse rushed into the room. "Awake, handsome," she smiled. "Good morning." "What's wrong with my legs?" David had no desire to be polite. "Let's start by measuring your temperature and blood pressure," the nurse babbled, avoiding the question. "Tell me what's wrong with my legs. Why can't I feel them?" David shouted. The woman froze and looked directly into David's eyes. Beautiful, in a cream-colored uniform, she seemed like the epitome of care, warmth, and professionalism. The nurse stared at David without blinking, and that gaze brought relief. He began to calm down, believing he was in good hands. Her dark blue, almost azure eyes resembled lakes of kindness and attention. They looked in such a way that you wanted to sink into them. This gaze made you feel like there was someone in this vast world who understood you and was ready to help. David indeed felt better, and he asked again, but this time without raising his voice, "Please tell me, will I be able to walk?" "You're not ready for serious discussions yet," the woman said kindly. She placed her hand on his, and warmth echoed in his soul. It seemed the nurse touched his heart, melting the ice of fear and misunderstanding within it. "But I can say one thing for sure," she added seriously. "Right now your legs are entirely in your hands. It all depends on you. If you're strong, you'll walk. Do you understand me?" The young man nodded as, "Of course, I'll be strong." The woman smiled again and began to measure his blood pressure. David watched her smooth movements and thought her smile was a ray of light in the world of pain and suffering, giving hope and solace to those like him. It instilled confidence that everything would be okay, giving hope and optimism. The nurse's smile was a remedy that helped patients overcome trials and move forward, and he would move forward. He definitely would. 3 days later, David stepped out of his room for the first time and saw where he had been all this time. The Rehabilitation Center for the Disabled turned out to be much larger than he could have imagined. The young man's heart contracted with pity and a desire to escape. It felt strange to be here among people who, like him, had lost their previous lives by chance. They were all cripples now, and they all had to learn to live again, accepting new rules of the game. David scanned the room. It was spacious and bright. High ceilings, wide windows with light curtains letting in streams of midday sun. Bright paintings and motivating photographs of Paralympic athletes adorned the walls, some without legs, some without arms, some wearing dark glasses. The images instilled in the center's residents the thought that each of them had the strength to overcome obstacles. David couldn't move his legs, so he maneuvered in a wheelchair. All conditions were created for this here. He rolled slowly down the bright corridor, observing people and the center itself. There were specialized rooms for physical rehabilitation and therapy, halls for physical exercise, gymnasiums with modern equipment, and a pool for aqua therapy. He saw activity bustling in every room and understood that giving up was not an option here. Everywhere an atmosphere of hope, faith, and unearthly strength prevailed. Doctors, nurses, and other patients spoke with the young man. He welcomed the attention because he was tired of fighting nightmares alone. In the rehabilitation center lived people of different ages and backgrounds, with different stories and sorrows. But David clearly understood that each patient was full of determination and a desire to move forward. Everyone supported each other here, and he was very glad of that. 2 months passed. David had long since risen from his wheelchair, learned to use crutches, and became at home in the center. He had real friends now who believed in his recovery, but he had to say goodbye to them. Any day now the discharge papers were expected to arrive. David both anticipated and feared it. He was scared to return to the world where he once was, just an ordinary worker named Dave. It was frightening to realize that there, beyond the hospital walls, life went on and nobody cared about him. He was very scared, but that was later. For now, he was still here, in the safe, supportive atmosphere of the Rehabilitation Center. Out of habit, David went for a morning walk through the corridors and suddenly froze in place. Before him stood a girl in the same wheelchair he once used. She was obviously new. He had never seen her before. In that moment, he felt goosebumps run down his skin. Everything around him dimmed and lost its shape. This girl was so beautiful that her beauty seemed to eclipse the sun. Her sad gaze, like a mirror, reflected unseen depths of the soul, and her plump lips stirred his heart. The dark brown hair of the enchanting stranger cascaded around her. It danced in the sun's rays, which penetrated through the curtains, creating an aura of mystery and magic around her. Even in a wheelchair, she didn't lose her elegance and grace. Straight back, long neck, incredibly delicate hands, and one leg. In his previous life, David might have been embarrassed, frightened, turned away. But not now. In this life, he was captivated by her, conquered, enthralled. He approached her carefully, adjusting his crutches. Observing her, David tried to remain unnoticed because he understood her state. He knew how scared she must be. Yet she was beautiful. The hospital attire couldn't hide her athletic figure and well-kept skin. In every detail of her appearance, the careful attention to her appearance was evident, as if she were about to step onto the red carpet. She wasn't just a beautiful girl in a wheelchair. She was his personal source of inspiration and admiration. "Hi, I'm David," the young man greeted shyly. "I'm Lucy," the girl replied, swallowing tears. A sob, another one, and another. David stood by quietly, giving her time. Lucy glanced at him gratefully for not intruding into her personal space. He wanted to take her hand, hug her, hold her close, but he stayed put. She was too vulnerable right now. He didn't want to scare her. "Happened to you?" Lucy asked once she calmed down a bit. "Work accident?" The guy exhaled with a silly smile. "At least that's what the police report says." "And in reality?" "In reality, our boss wanted to impress some investors and ignored safety protocols. And I happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time." Her big brown eyes widened even more. "So you're here because of someone else's mistake?" "Yeah, there are many of us like that here." David smiled foolishly again. Lorenzo, for example, fell out of the window when he tried to get the neighbor's cat. And Ariel was working on the railroad. Her assistant forgot to tell her something, and she got stuck between the wagons. Life has its ways, you know. David realized he was spouting nonsense, but he couldn't stop himself. "And I'm here because of someone else's mistake," Lucy sniffled, choking back tears again. "I was crossing the street at a crosswalk and some jerk ran a red light. Now I'm here, and he's living his life peacefully." Rich jerk. David couldn't find the right words. Any words seemed inadequate. So he placed his hand on Lucy's shoulder, letting her know she wasn't alone. "And I used to be a dancer," the girl sobbed. "Well, I was a dancer," and she started crying again. David's heart squeezed. He hadn't fully come to terms with his own condition yet, and now he had to support her. This beautiful girl who lost her leg, her dreams, her self-control in a split second. Sometime later, David was discharged from the center. It was warm and sunny outside. In the heart of the city, hustle and bustle, between the walls of multi-story buildings, lay an island of tranquility and serenity. Leaving the noisy street behind, David found himself in this cozy labyrinth of flower beds and pathways, where the city noise faded under the gentle embrace of greenery and silence. He deliberately got out of the taxi, a block away, to take a stroll around. This was his new home now. After being discharged from the rehabilitation center, he didn't want to return to his old apartment, where everything would remind him of his old life. He was different now, and he was starting life anew. David wasn't in a hurry. He walked towards his building, observing the courtyard. The dappled light played in the shady corners, filtering through the leaves of the trees, creating unusual patterns on the stone pavement of the sidewalks. Greenery framed the paths running along the houses, enticing one to stop and enjoy the moment of tranquility. The ringing voices of children echoed from the playground, mingling with joyful laughter. Boys and girls climbed colorful plastic structures, squealing and giggling. Once upon a time, he was just as carefree. A long time ago. David sighed and continued walking. On the benches in the center of the courtyard, elderly people sat, flipping through the pages of yellowed newspapers and quietly discussing the latest news. Behind them, like an oasis in the ocean of concrete jungles, stretched a green lawn. David smiled, imagining having a picnic there with his friends. Ascending the steps, the young man entered the elevator and pressed the button for his floor. Before the doors closed, an elderly woman rushed into the elevator. She gave David an assessing look, but said nothing. This look was familiar to him. It was bestowed upon everyone with peculiarities, everyone who didn't resemble the normal inhabitants of this world. The psychologists at the center had prepared David for these looks, filled with simultaneous contempt, sympathy, and pity. After dozens of sessions, he thought he was ready to endure such a gaze, but in life, it turned out to be harder than during the psychologist's sessions, much harder. Crossing the threshold of his new abode, David immediately called Lucy. She was still in rehabilitation, and he already missed her terribly. "How do you like your new home?" the girl asked from the phone screen. "It's okay," he smirked. "It will be better with you." From the very first moment of meeting Lucy, David realized he didn't want to let her go anywhere. He promised himself to be her reliable support and protection from all troubles, deciding that he would be there even if she never loved him back. His love would be enough for both of them. Every day, David would stand in front of the monitor in the middle of his room, playing a video on YouTube, and take a deep breath. Knowing that unbearable pain would pierce his back again, knowing that he would fall again and possibly hit his head. He knew all this but still stood up. He looked at the girl on the screen and saw his reflection. He saw his dreams and hopes. His heart began to beat stronger than usual, filling the air with passion and determination. He was a disabled person, deprived of the ability to dance, a disabled person who would endlessly try and eventually dance. The first step. Every muscle in his body feels it. Movements are very difficult. But David isn't going to give up. Shifting the crutches, he tries to shift the weight to his legs. He moves his arms, following the girl in the video, rocking his head and hips. Another step. His legs don't listen. His back aches from the effort, but he continues. Slowly but surely, he masters the basic movements. A smile touches his face, and he realizes that he's capable of much despite his condition. He's stronger than destiny. Stronger. He makes another movement and another, and suddenly, he shifts the weight too abruptly from the crutches to his legs, and failing to cope, falls to the floor. A searing pain shoots through his back, from the waist to the neck, and David can't help but groan. He lies there whimpering like a wounded wolf. It seemed like an eternity passed before he turned over and tried to get up. There were no nurses, doctors, or comrades in the apartment. He had to cope on his own. Taking a deep breath into his lungs and exhaling loudly through his mouth, David said to himself, "I will dance, not for myself, for Lucy. I want to show her that life doesn't end with the loss of a leg. I want to show that she can still dance. I want to show her that I'm ready to do anything for her." After all, in the world of dance, there are no boundaries or barriers. Here, every person is free, regardless of their limitations. Here, everyone can find their place and unleash their potential. And as long as the music plays, one must continue to dance, giving themselves and everyone around a piece of magic and joy. "Good day, John Walter. Do you have any idea what that awful noise is coming from the third floor?" the woman in large glasses exclaimed, meeting her neighbor from the second floor by the entrance. "Hello, Laurel Valley. I've been trying to understand it myself for a week now. Sometimes something falls, sometimes there are screams, can't sleep peacefully or watch TV. I'm worried about my girls. I don't want them to get scared." Yes, we must protect the girls. Children's psyche is not a toy. I'll talk to this disturber of the peace. The whole house suffers because of him." "Please do, Laurel Valley. And if you need any help, let me know. I'm always available." David stood by the open window and listened to the absurd conversation. It's strange to hear yourself discussed in the third person, and it's even stranger to realize that your innocent hobby bothers someone so much. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the door. He said he wasn't dressed and didn't open it, but he apologized for the noise and promised to relieve the neighbors of their concern. The next day, returning home, John Walter smelled something delicious. Seeing his beloved girls setting the table, he kissed his wife first, then both daughters, and went to change and wash his hands. During dinner, the family not only shared food, but also moments of joy and closeness to each other. With a smile on her face and sparks in her eyes, his wife poured fragrant tea into cups, and her caring hands glided over the dishes, caressing each item on the table. Loved ones exchanged news, joked, and chatted, when suddenly a piercing roar came from above, scaring the daughters, the wife, and even the master of the house to death. Prolonged moans, banging, abrupt shouts, and a cacophony of hellish sounds merged into one. "That's it, enough, I'm calling the police," John shouted, and grabbed his phone. 30 minutes later, the patrol arrived. The whole house came out to see what was happening in the unfortunate apartment. John was ready to explode with anger. Everything was boiling inside him. He had been accumulating irritation for too long. The law enforcement officers knocked on the door. It was opened by a young man, leaning on a crutch, neat, attentive, caring. His appearance didn't match the terrifying sounds coming from the apartment a few minutes ago. "Excuse me for this noise," the young man began. "How much longer?" the neighbors grumbled, interrupting each other. "It's impossible to watch TV or sleep normally. Unbelievable." "Quiet, dear neighbors," intervened one of the policemen. "Explain to us what's going on." He addressed the man with the crutch. "The thing is," the young man continued, lowering his gaze to the crutch, "I was recently discharged from a rehabilitation center. There I met an amazing girl. Her name is Lucy." His eyes sparkled with joy at the thought of her. "I fell in love with her so much that I decided to save her at any cost," the man sighed. "She was a professional dancer, but lost her leg in a car accident." Whispers of indignation and surprise echoed through the stairwell. Her dreams of a dance career shattered into tiny pieces, along with her self-belief and love for life, you see? A young and very beautiful girl lost not only her leg, she lost herself. All the tenants froze. It seemed they even stopped breathing. "I can't leave her alone with an unbearable burden. I can't let her wither away like a flower without water, you understand?" The young man glanced at the neighbors. "I decided to show her that you can dance without a leg." All the neighbors standing on the staircase gasped simultaneously. "And you know, even without crutches, I wasn't particularly distinguished by my choreographic talent. And with crutches, it's even harder for me to master this art." The man smiled and continued more seriously. "The pain is hellish. My legs don't listen to me, they don't want to work. Sometimes I fall to the floor in helplessness and whimper like a beaten dog, from pain and hopelessness. But then I get up and continue my workouts." The young man glanced at all the neighbors again. Tears welled up in someone's eyes, someone guiltily lowered their gaze, but everyone was equally eager to hear the continuation of the story, and John was also eagerly awaiting it. "At first I couldn't even stand on my feet. Well, what can I say? I could barely make it to the bathroom even with 2 crutches. The doctors said that a wheelchair would be my lifelong companion. They said I would never be able to walk this, and here I decided to dance. Can you imagine?" His sad face was once again touched by a sunny smile. "And I dance. Look at this." The man demonstratively leaned his crutch against the wall, spread his arms to the sides balancing on one leg, and moved his hips and arms to the beat of a non-existent melody. The audience in the hallway burst into applause. Everyone cheered and praised the guy with the crutch, rejoicing in his success. John's heart was torn apart by a whole range of emotions. "Every day I record my workouts on video and send them to Lucy," the young man continued. "At first, she didn't even watch. She's at home now," he sighed. "She doesn't want to see anyone, doesn't want to talk to anyone. Of course, she's depressed. I was like that too, so I understand her better than anyone. And I won't give up. I'll pull her out of it." The man took a deep breath and exhaled loudly. He looked at the neighbors, and the neighbors looked at him. Each one was thinking about something of their own, and for a few moments there was silence in the hallway. People exchanged glances, breathed in and out, nodded their heads. "I'm so ashamed," to suddenly burst out of John's chest. I couldn't even imagine that you, well, dance through pain. for love. John lowered his gaze to the floor, then stepped closer to the neighbor with the crutch and extended his hand. And you understand me. I have 2 little daughters, a wife. I worry about them. In short, I'm John. If I can help with anything, let me know. David, the young man from the 3rd floor replied with a handshake. Thank you. The neighbors, interrupting each other one after another, began to offer their help. David squeezed the crutch handle and smiled gratefully. Tears of joy glistened in his sad eyes, and his courageous face suddenly became soft and tender. Thank you all. As the police left, the neighbors went back to their apartments. The heart-wrenching story left no one indifferent. Everyone felt ashamed. People were so fixated on their irritation with the noise that they didn't even try to find out its cause. They were angry at the neighbor because he disturbed their peaceful TV watching while he was desperately fighting for a normal life, for love, for humanity. The day ended, but the thoughts remained in everyone's head. Dad, what if I teach David? John's elder daughter suggested, sitting at the dinner table. I've been dancing for 2 years already. I can show him some moves. The parents glanced at each other and simultaneously raised their eyes to the ceiling. David lives 1 floor above, and perhaps right now he's battling pain to take another step. John was pleased that his little girl showed compassion, so he of course decided to support her. Of course, Megan, let's talk to David and schedule some training days. Yay, both daughters happily clapped their hands. I'm sure David will be delighted. After all, communication and support are the best things one person can offer to another. Megan adored her dance studio. Every time she walked in, she felt like she was crossing the threshold into a magical world, where every movement became part of an incredible symphony of emotions. The spacious room, surrounded by mirrored walls, reflected every step as if creating a parallel reality where time flowed by different rules. The air here was infused with the rhythms of music, which sounded somewhere in the distance, as if inviting into its world. The rustle of dancing feet created a melodic background, filling the space with a fairy tale. The mirrors on the walls reflected not only movements, but also feelings, and focused, sometimes amusing, gazes. The faces of Megan's friends flickered in the reflections, like real little stars in the night sky. The studio also had a corner for relaxation, where the girls kept bottles of water and chatted before classes. On the wall, where there was no mirror, there were photos from their past performances, reminding them that here everyone found their path to success and perfection. The dance studio Megan attended was not just a place for training. It was a world where dreams were born and ideas were realized, where everyone could find their place and destiny. The girl was very glad that she came here. So, hi girls, I have something to tell you, Megan exclaimed, tossing her bag onto the couch. The friends gathered around and began to sit down around the girl. Now I will be a dance teacher, Megan proudly announced. How so? The girls were surprised. There is a man living above us. His name is David. He can't walk, but he wants to learn to dance because he loves Lucy. And she used to be a dancer, but she got into an accident, and now she has no leg. Megan looked at her friends and lifted her head higher. David wants to prove to Lucy that you can dance even without legs because he loves her very much. But he can't dance himself, so I'll teach him. That's it. Wow, the girls were amazed. Yes, indeed, it seems I know who this girl Lucy is, suddenly said the refined choreographer, Isabel. Megan didn't notice her entering the dance class. Apparently, she heard the whole story. This is my colleague, Isabel sighed sadly. She worked in our studio. She just taught classes on different days, so you don't know her. Her eyes were ready to cream. I haven't seen her since the accident. They say she refuses to leave the house. Let's invite David and Lucy to our group, one of Megan's friends suggested. They will train with us, and they will feel good. Exactly, and we'll all teach David to dance together, Megan added. Isabel pressed her finger to her chin and pondered. That's actually a wonderful idea. No, we can't invite them to our group, of course, but we can definitely open a separate group for them. For the past month, Isabel had been immersed in studying the issues related to opening a specialized group for students with special needs. She searched for similar practices,
didn't expect to see
consulted
you here,
with
he began
psychologists
shyly.
and doctors,
Well, hello,
and read
Brian, looks
thematic
like you've become
literature.
a real city boy.
After convincing the studio director, she then found sponsors to ensure that the group for students would be entirely free of charge, equipped with a wealth of knowledge and new skills, all to help her former colleague and everyone who had encountered such adversity. Meanwhile, under the careful guidance of her choreographer, Megan had been practicing with David at home, while Isabel distributed information about the group's opening on thematic forums and internet portals. Finally, the day came. The new group appeared on the studio's schedule. The first class began. "Welcome," nodded Isabel to the guy, cautiously shuffling his disobedient legs. "Hello," smiled the young man, crossing the threshold of the dance class, leaning on one crutch. Just think, a young, handsome guy swept up in the whirlwind of life carries on his shoulders the burden that time cannot tame. He is disabled, but his spirit is not weakened. On the contrary, it is filled with strength and determination to overcome all the obstacles that fate throws at him. His eyes are windows to a soul that shines brighter than any starry sky. They harbor an insatiable thirst for life, a readiness to embrace all hardships with an open heart and soul. These eyes reflect not only pain and suffering, but also incredible willpower and unwavering resolve. The young disabled man moves through life with ease and grace, despite his physical limitations. His steps are small victories testifying to a tireless struggle for a place under the sun. He doesn't just walk, he conquers worlds that others only dream of. His smile is a beam of light in a world of darkness, illuminating grey weekdays with warmth and light. It's like a magnet that attracts people to him, charging them with energy and optimism. In its simplicity and sincerity lies a power capable of overcoming any obstacles. The young disabled man is not just a person with limited abilities. He is a warrior, fighting for his place in the world and proving that the strength of the spirit can overcome any obstacles. His story is one of courage, determination, and unwavering resilience that inspires and admires everyone he meets on his journey. Isabel sincerely admired him. "I've heard a lot about you," smiled the choreographer, pointing to her little protégé, Megan. "I'm glad to finally meet you." "And I'm very glad," David replied, a little embarrassed. That day he was the only student, but there was a phone in the corner of the room streaming the class live. At first, nobody watched the broadcast, but by the end of the training, there were already several thousand viewers. Among them was Lucy, the beloved of the novice dancer, a great choreographer who lost her leg due to someone's mistake. She wrote a comment under the video, "I'm watching and crying. Not so long ago, I taught kids to dance in the same hall. I showed them movements, taught them technique, made them point their toes, praised and scolded the girls, and endlessly loved my job. And now, I'm lying half alive in bed, feeling sorry for myself. But I'm tired of being weak. I want to live and enjoy life again, even without one leg. Thank you, David, for leading me. Thank you for your courage, resilience, and strength. I admire you endlessly, and I am infinitely grateful to you. I've decided I'm coming back to life thanks to you." At the next session, David and Lucy arrived together. They moved their arms and heads in synchrony, swaying to the leisurely rhythm of a foreign song and radiating happiness. David showed his beloved not only dances but also opened the door to a bright future that Lucy had refused to notice. Isabel's new students stepped through this door together, holding hands. David started his YouTube channel, and the whole city learned about their dance group. 6 months had passed since his first training session, and now there were already 8 enthusiastic dancers. They were all special, but they were all equally strong, passionate, and indomitable in spirit. They came to the studio, danced, and forgot about their ailments. They rejoiced in life and believed that all good things were still ahead. The young people inspired everyone else, showing by their example that life is beautiful in all its manifestations and that problems don't really exist. Lucy now lived with David. It was easier for them to take care of each other. Sometimes they dropped something, laughed or yelled, but the neighbors no longer complained. On the contrary, now they often dropped by, treated them to homemade pastries, and tried to help in every way possible. It was as if there was no anger or misunderstanding at all. They all now lived like one big, happy family. Lucy looked out the window and reflected that she probably would never be able to fully accept her new self. But still, she tried very, very hard. David insisted that she needed to forgive the one who took her leg, and somewhere deep down the girl agreed, but for now she couldn't manage it, although she tried very hard. At least, she tried to live a full life with the person who didn't let her fall. Lucy considered David an amazing person. If not for him, the girl wouldn't have pulled herself together. She would have sunk into her grief, closed herself off from the world. But he saved her. He saved her soul, giving her hope. Now Lucy walked behind him with her head held high. She helped David give hope to other lost souls, just like they once were. How great it was that they had each other. And it seemed that soon there would be 3 of them. Life is a precious gift that we receive only once. It is filled with an infinite number of wonders and opportunities given to us to explore, experience, and love. In every moment lies value, which we often overlook in pursuit of illusory goals. To cherish life means to find beauty in its invisible moments, in the smile of a stranger on the street, in the scent of freshly baked bread, in the warmth of the sun's rays on the skin, in a neighbor's kind word in dance. It means to realize that even in the most difficult times there is something valuable that makes us richer and more significant. To cherish life means to be grateful for each day, each breath, each heartbeat, each step. It means to remember those who couldn't live a full life and to be grateful for the opportunity to live our own. It means to realize that each day is a gift that must be accepted and carried in our hearts. To cherish life means to live fully, enjoying every moment, every breath in and out. It means to seek adventures, strive for dreams, love and be loved. It means to open up to the world and embrace its embrace. To cherish life means to take care of ourselves and those around us. It means to be caring, compassionate, and kind, as our lives are intertwined with the lives of others, and each of us influences the world around us. So let's cherish life, not just live it. Let's live with full dedication, with love and gratitude. May each day become a new adventure for us, a new step towards happiness and the fulfillment of dreams. And one more thing, in a world where every step is considered a victory, helping people with disabilities is not just a kind deed. It is a manifestation of true human consciousness and compassion. When we meet the gaze of someone with a disability, we are obliged to see in them not only a person with physical limitations, but also a bearer of immense strength and spiritual wisdom. By assisting people with disabilities, we build bridges between worlds, bringing different destinies and histories closer together. We open doors for them to a world of possibilities where there is no room for prejudice and limitations. We give them hope for a future filled with light and joy. And we also give this hope to ourselves because by helping others we strengthen our own soul and heart. We understand that each of us has the power to make the world a better place, and that even a small act of kindness can change someone's life for the better. We learn to see the beauty in differences and to appreciate each person for who they are. By supporting those who are different from us, we build a society based on mutual understanding and assistance. We create a culture of inclusion where every person has the right to equal opportunities and dignity. We make the world a more harmonious and just place by eradicating discrimination and alienation. After all, don't we want to live in an ideal world? Do we not want our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren to live in this world? But what is the ideal world like? An ideal world can be described as a place where harmony, equality, and mutual understanding prevail. It is a place where every person finds their place in the sun, where every day is filled with meaning and joy. In an ideal world, there is no division into classes or social groups. Here, every person is valued and respected, regardless of their status, wealth, or appearance. In an ideal world, there is no place for discrimination, injustice, or unfairness. Here, the rights and freedoms of every individual are protected and upheld not only by law, but also by public opinion. In an ideal world, mutual aid and solidarity reign. People help each other without expecting gratitude or reward. They understand that only by coming together can they overcome the difficulties and problems that stand in their way. Here, Every person has access to education, healthcare, decent work, and the respect of others. There is no poverty or despair here. Every person has the opportunity to develop and fulfill their potential, regardless of whether they have legs or arms. Nature in an ideal world is valued and respected as the common home of all humanity. People treat the environment with care, striving to preserve its beauty and richness for future generations. But the most important thing in an ideal world is love and understanding, which unite all its inhabitants into a single whole. People love, respect, and support each other, striving to create a world where everyone can be happy, free, and fulfilled. Let's create our ideal world together.